Now, so I actually have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
So let me start with a couple of features having to do with finding the essence of the question.
Okay.
You see. So some of the issues that you ignored,
Okay.
and rightly ignored in a sense, but actually you did ask the question at one point, geez, I wonder why it's called the Ramanujan. Right?
Yeah.
You asked that question.
Yeah. Or yes.
I think it was roughly that question.
It was something about describing why it is
Yeah,
and what does it do.
Yeah, what does it do? What it is. And the another feature that you ignored is that you ignored the name of the High Lama.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot what his name was.
Well, let's see, I'll review it for you.
Okay.
It says Hardy, the High Lama.
Hardy.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing you ignored was how many years the genie was in the bottle.
Oh yeah, I did write it down though.
Oh, how many?
I think it was 1700 and let's see, what do I have here? 1729 years.
1729 years. Okay, so this we're going to take a cultural excursion here for a moment. In fact, all of these features are part of the cultural history of number theory, of mathematics. And so I want to tell you the story. It turned out that in the early part of the 1900s, there was a mathematician by the name of Srinivasa Ramanujan. Srinivasa Ramanujan. And he was a mathematician who lived in India. And he was basically not trained in the formal training of mathematics. He did have some books, but he didn't go to the elite colleges and to the universities. But he loved numbers. And he just studied numbers, and he was really very, very bright. And so he really thought of all kinds of insights about numbers. And he was so good at this that he finally was persuaded to write a letter to the most famous mathematician in the world of the time, whose name was G.H. Hardy. And so Hardy was a mathematician in England, and one of the most best mathematicians in the world. And Ramanujan wrote him this long letter that contained many results about number theory. And what was interesting was that Ramanujan's approach to number theory was quite different from the standard approach that the developed world of mathematics had taken. And so among the insights that Ramanujan had about numbers, some of them were of the type of insights that standard mathematical inquiry had developed over those years, and some of them were quite a different approach, different kinds of questions and different kinds of answers. For example, there was a long tradition, and in fact in this class itself, we've talked about prime numbers, or we will talk about prime numbers, which are numbers that cannot be evenly divisible by any smaller number than, for example, the number 3 or 5 or 7. They can't be divided by smaller natural numbers other than 1. Mm-hmm. So these are prime numbers. Well, those had been studied extensively over the thousands of years. But Ramanujan thought, well, it's also interesting to look at numbers that have a large number of factors. Instead of a few factors, like just one factor, like a prime, how about a number that has an unusually large number of factors to it? And so he studied that kind of number. Well, that wasn't in the tradition of mathematicians to study in the developed world. So he had these very interesting insights because he had a different approach to things. Mm-hmm. You know, well, when Hardy got this letter, which a long treatise with many results, he realized that this person was a real gem in the world. And so he invited Ramanujan to come to England, and they worked together and wrote papers and did mathematics together. It was really quite a story. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that happened was that Ramanujan, who was used to the hot Indian weather in India, he came to England where it's cold and damp, and he got sick. And it was very, very, very sad. And he was in the hospital, and one day G.H. Hardy came to visit him in the hospital. And he came to the hospital, and this is, by the way, one of the famous stories about mathematicians and number theory. So that's why I'm telling it. So he came to the hospital, and this is the way that Hardy tells the story himself. And so I'll quote from Hardy as he described his visit to Ramanujan. He said, and I should say about Ramanujan that he considered these numbers his personal friends. He just loved numbers, and he would know things about these numbers that were very interesting and detailed about numbers. Well, so here, that's what makes this story interesting. So, a famous illustration of Ramanujan's deep connection with numbers is the story of Hardy's visit to Ramanujan in hospital. Hardy later recounted the incident as follows. I remember once going to see him when he was lying ill at Putney. Apparently Putney is the name of the hospital, so he was in Putney. I had ridden in a taxi cab number 1729, and remarked that the number seemed to me rather a dull one, and that I hoped it was not an unfavorable omen.
Okay.
See, these are mathematicians. Maybe their social skills we have maybe questioned, but he remembered the name of his taxi cab. No, Ramanujan replied. It is a very interesting number. It's the smallest number expressible as the sum of two cubes in two different ways. So of course this begs the question, and I wouldn't give it away, of course, I will ask you to find two different ways to express the number 1729 in two different ways as the sum of two cubes. So there's a challenge for you. But it's such a wonderful story, delightful to think of Hardy coming in and trying to think, well, what can we talk about? And he says, well, I remember the name of my taxi cab, and then brings it up, and then it turns out it has this very interesting association.